have a literacy consultant who has lots of years of experience in lots of different places around the world, conferring with teachers, but also providing information to parents as well and working with students. And she is with us for the week, and she has agreed to do a little parent session today about how you can support your child's reading at home. So this is Kathy Collins, and she's from New Hampshire in the United States, but like I said, she's worked all over the world in schools everywhere, on all the continents, and we're excited to have her here with us today. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gail. Hi, everybody. Just a quick thing. We're being live streamed. I don't know if I've ever been live streamed before. On which side should I don't know. So they asked if people could put their phones in airplane or flight mode. Just, I think that the phones might interfere with connections or something. So thank you so much for visiting or being here we have about an hour, and I have a couple minutes after before I have to go. I have a workshop this afternoon that I'm doing for teachers. And Gail, thank you for introducing me. Gail and I have worked together in different capacities over the years, and I've had the pleasure of working with her students for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, and then I'll be back in her classroom tomorrow. And so I don't know if anybody here has children in First Steps, and because I was in Gigi and Amy's room, and then for pre-primary I was working in Loretta's room. Does anybody have? Oh my gosh, it was so nice. It's just such a wonderful school. I was here, we figured it out, 2017 was that I was here, and then, things happened for a couple of years, which we won't go into, and so my travel stopped, like everybody's, and so I just feel like I'm reborn with my international schools. I was just in a school in Tunisia, and then visiting here, and it's just so great to be here. So a quick thing before I start. So I'm a literacy educator, as Gail said, but a teacher, former first grade, early grades teacher in Brooklyn. I grew up in the States and taught mostly in Brooklyn. And I wrote a few books, and then all of a sudden you get the opportunity to go to different schools and support teachers in different schools. So I've been doing that for a stretch, and then in the States, and then in different international schools. But I still always identify as a classroom teacher. When I dream the dream, my husband's a teacher back in the States. He's a middle school math teacher. I don't understand. He used to like literacy. Now all of a sudden he's in math world, and I don't know, I'm joking, but that's true. But I still like it. You forget it. I don't have to. Who cares? But we think about teaching when our kids are fledged a little bit, and going international, just because it's such an amazing world for teachers and for kids, and I just dream of being in a classroom. I would love to be your colleague, think with you. So anyway, but I'm the parent of 2 boys, and they're older now. One is 18, he's a senior in high school, and one is 20, he's a sophomore in college, and they couldn't, so I'm starting, this is a little self-indulgent to start this way, talking about my kids. But what I want to say to you, the reason I'm starting with my kids is they couldn't be more different as readers. Raised in the same family, our house is full of books. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. If you said to me, you have 2 hours, you could do anything you want. Why read, of course? I would have a book and a cup of tea and a blanket and a comfortable chair and be good. So our house, my husband is also a reader, avid reader. One of my sons, I would say, is an avid reader, although he's busy. Sophomore in college, he's a college athlete. So his reading life has gone dormant. His pleasure reading life, I should say, has gone dormant because he has college demands, athletic demands, social demands, probably, who knows. My high school senior has never been an engaged reader. Given a choice of things to do, reading would be last on his list. And that upset me, truth be told, now that he's 18 and we're beyond it. When he was little, he would say things like, his brother would be reading in bed and they shared a room, and I said, Theo, why don't you read? You got your nightlight. I don't like to read, I just like to think. He would say things like, the worst part of reading is starting a book. And I'm, oh no, we got problems. Because you got to start a book. But anyway, he was an active kid. Well, both of my boys are active, but Theo was an outside kid, a social kid. So for him, the act of reading never appealed, and probably still doesn't appeal to him so much, but he does love books, and he loves conversation, and he loves thinking about things. So there's hope for him yet. So I share these stories with you to say, I'm so much more confident supporting teachers in their work with kids, because as a parent, every day, especially when they were little, every day was like, are we doing the right thing? Is this, and I was so suggestible. If one person told me this, yeah, no, that makes total sense. And then another person would tell me this, yeah, that makes total sense. And I sometimes, so if you're a parent like that, if you're uncertain, I hope today gives you some ideas. I also want to say I present to you with humility in that I come from a context. I'm a white, middle-class American. English is my first language. I was, part of my identity is being a good girl in school. I knew how to do school, and so I come with those identity markers, and I just want to say that. I say that with humility because I might present from that angle here and there, but I just want you to know that I acknowledge there's so many different cultures, obviously, but also so many different family cultures and family expectations. And so what I share with you will be research-based about reading, but I have no idea how to make it make sense for your family. You can take what resonates with you, what fits with your family values, and see if that, if it works in your household. But I really, more than anything, want parents, caregivers to be comfortable with their kids around books and joyful around books. And that's all I have to say, really. I got more. But anyway, so I don't have my clicker, so I'm gonna have to self-click. So a couple of, can you see, is it, okay? A couple of quick things. So when we want kids to become strong readers, we teach in school, we teach in 3 domains, mostly. If you were to, not that I'm suggesting this, if you were to take an inventory of all the instruction your child's teacher offers, now this is probably starting from mid-year, primary on. I'm not speaking to first year or first steps parents or pre-primary parents just yet. But in school, these 3 things are prioritized in reading instruction. 1, helping kids become people who can say, I can read the words. And when the words are hard, I can figure them out. I have lots of strategies. I'm resilient and I'm brave. And I don't give up. That's so not only are teachers teaching strategies to figure out words, they're also helping kids develop the dispositions to want to figure out words and to want to be brave. So decoding skills. The second chunk, and by the way, I made a PDF of these slides just so you'll get a copy of these if you're interested. I should have said that up front. So the second domain or realm or category is supporting kids to read with fluency. So they read smoothly with expression and prosody, which prosody is the way your voice reflects the tone of the text. And for little kids, it's reading punctuation, understanding how punctuation makes your voice go. It also involves reading rate, so they don't read too slowly and they don't read too quickly. So finding that just right, 3 bears, just right fluency spot. And fluency is so important because it ties in with reading engagement. Because if you're not a fluent reader, and if you think about adults, we read in our heads. If the voice in our head isn't fluent, it's so hard to get engaged with the book. And I use a quick example. This is kind of funny, I can't believe I'm thinking of it in this moment, but back in we lived in Alaska for a couple of years. My husband's from Alaska. And one of our neighbors was, she was an actor and Shakespeare actor back in the old days. So she would have a Shakespeare book club, a play club. So people, and I was never that. I watched The Office on TV. I don't know, I never did that. But I was in the Shakespeare book club, and reading Shakespeare cold was so hard, and I had to keep rereading. So, and I couldn't engage with it until I felt fluent with it. And so that's just an example of the importance of fluency. And then finally, teachers work so hard on teaching kids to understand what they're reading, making meaning, comprehension skills. And again, the dispositions for comprehension, I want to understand. Oops, I don't understand. How am I going to fix it? So rest assured, as your children move through FIS, these 3 things are covered, and we're thinking so hard this week about how to support children in all 3 of these things. Now, for pre-primary and first years, we're not so much about reading actual words. What we're working on is laying the groundwork so that when kids are ready to read words, they've got all the things in place that will help them to do so. And I'll be talking about some of those things and ways you can support your kids at home if they're what teachers would call pre-conventional readers. Pre-conventional readers are readers who aren't yet reading the words. But I want to say every child's a reader. I was in First Steps this morning, and I'll show you in a moment. I was reading aloud a book with kids, and we were reading the pictures. And kids were making so much meaning. They were using very sophisticated comprehension skills to understand what was going on in the pictures. So even though they're not yet reading the words, they are doing the heavy lifting, some heavy lifting of being a reader. So anyway, so school has these things covered. So what a family, I think, I'm working on a book right now. I should have changed my slide to reflect this. I think I call these the big 3. Those are the curricular work that teachers do, but their readers really need a big 4. And the 4th one is reading with pleasure. Because if you're a pleasure reader, if you find reading fun, engaging, you're more likely to read. And if you're more likely to read, you're more likely to get better reading practice. And if you're reading more, getting more practice, you become a stronger reader. And it's a cycle, a self-fulfilling cycle, because when you're strong at something, you're more likely to do it. And if you're more likely to do it, you keep getting stronger. So the 4th box that I could add to this slide, I read with pleasure, is I think the domain where school and parents and families really need to partner up. So that's what we'll be talking about. Now, you'll notice I tried to use FIS colors. Go team, warriors, I don't know. But this is an annoying slide, I know, because it's got so much text on it. But you'll get the copy of this. But you see those 3 things that up top. Schools got it. Not that you can't support it, but your teachers are thinking so hard about how to support each individual child to become a decoder, a fluent reader who understands. These on the bottom in yellow are the things that families and teachers can partner up to support children. And I'll just read them super quickly. We won't dig into them so much right now. Some of these will emerge as I continue the presentation. But I have reading tastes and preferences. When you have tastes and preferences, it could be about art, it could be about music, it could be about wine. When you have taste, when you're at a place where you can develop tastes and preferences, that suggests you have an identity. So let's just say music. So and I'll just be playful. You love punk rock. I don't know why I said that. I don't know anything about punk rock. but you have tastes and preferences. I like this band, not this band. Oh, I would prefer to go to a live show here, not here. You become kind of an expert, and as a reader, when you realize, oh, this is my favorite author. Of all the authors that write in this genre, this is my go-to author. Having tastes and preferences is empowering. So we want to help kids from the time they're teeny tiny to develop tastes and preferences. To see a 3-year-old say, this is my favorite Piggy and Elephant book, that's the first steps towards having that power of tastes and preferences. I respond to my reading. I talk about it. We'll talk about this more. I have healthy reading habits and behaviors. I read before bed. I have books by my bed. My family keeps books in the car. You know, I have access to books, and I have times when I read. So setting up some habits at home, and we'll talk about this a little more, can be helpful. I have a reading identity. I'm the kind of reader who. I'm the kind of reader that likes. I'm the kind of reader that wants. Where you could ask a child, and I could ask my older son, tell me 5 things about yourself. You know, and he'd say, I love to read books about the ocean and sustainability and environment. So that reading identity. I have a reading social network and support. Anything you do, human beings are social beings. Well, I won't say 100%, but often in our pursuits, we have a little social network that rides with us. So if you're somebody who runs, maybe you have a little running group, or maybe you don't have a running group, but you have a favorite running store. You like to get your running gear, and you like to talk to this clerk because she gets you. And so or you have an online blog you go to and you comment on the blog. Any pursuit in your life, you could things that you really enjoy doing, you probably have a little social network around that. So we want kids, because reading seems so independent and individual, but we want kids to understand that reading is also social. And when we're reading, we have people in our mind. I tell you, sometimes I'm reading a book, and if there's any politics in it, you know, political overtones, my mind is like, oh, my mom would hate this. You know, I'm always reading, thinking of other people, or reading in book clubs or in the company of other people, which we'll talk about what that looks like for kids. And then finally, having goals and plans and intentions, helping your kids think about what they want to do as readers, what kinds of things they want to read. So the message here, too, is that there's lots of ways to develop a reading life. It's not just that one straight line. I'm in first grade. I have reading time, therefore I'm becoming somebody who's a pleasure reader. There's lots of meandering, and for some kids, it isn't until they get that one book in their hand that they, you know, the child, the 4-year-old who's obsessed with dinosaurs, who has plastic dinosaur figures, when somebody gifts them a book for their birthday, and it's an eyewitness book on dinosaurs, and they have that book with them like it's their favorite blanket. And they always want that book with them. Sometimes that's the gateway. Sometimes it's a thing I want to learn to do. You know, oh, I really want to learn how to, you know, build a wooden deck off the back of my house. So I'm going to start reading about it. I'm going to read about it online. I'm going to read blogs. I'm going to read articles. And that's another quick distinction I want to make. 5 years ago when I was here, if I did a parent workshop, I probably referred to books all the time. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm talking about texts. And text is an umbrella, T-E-X-T-S. I don't know how it comes through. Is an umbrella term involving books and magazines and online content and memes and visual text, videos, shows. It's changed. There's so much more biodiversity. I don't know if that's not exactly the right word of kinds of text that kids get in their hands. So I don't want to just make this sound like it's only about books. It could be about any kind of text. So, but there's a lot of ways in, and sometimes your reading life, you know, like my college son, it was high. He had an avid pleasure reading life Right now it's probably down because he's got, as I said, college and social and athletic stuff, but he might have the muscle memory to bring it back up. And I don't know about any of you, but after I had children, those first couple of years, I couldn't hold a book. It took, Edna O'Brien is an Irish author, one of my favorite authors. I thought, she had a new book, this is the book that's gonna bring me back to reading. I'd fall asleep, I just couldn't, my mind couldn't focus. So I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even think I can read a novel anymore. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? So I was reading short things. Do you know what my gateway, I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud. My gateway book, we're not recording, right? I don't want to go on the record for this. My gateway book back to reading was Twilight. Not my genre, not my kind of book, but everyone was reading it at that time, and so I read it, and it was such a simple read, and I kind of was snotty about it, like, oh my gosh, oh, look at it, and I'd read aloud lines to my husband, and well, next thing you know, it gave me the practice back. So our reading lives, just know, like, it's a natural ebb and flow. So if your child right now, or one of your children, is not yet embracing, I am a reader, I enjoy reading, don't worry, because we don't say, if they're not enjoying reading by age 8, it's over. That they've got a whole lifetime to catch reading, but there's conditions we can create at home that increase the chances and lay a fertile ground so that reading life grows. So that's what we'll talk about. And I have 8 things that I'm going to try to say quickly so we leave time for questions. And I just, looking ahead, I will hope to leave like 5 or 10 minutes at the end for questions. But on my slides, which you'll get the PDF, there's some questions that I get asked a lot that I've included extra slides with those. So, and you'll have my email address. If you have a question we don't have a chance to get to, or if it's very specific and personal to you and your child, you can feel free to email me if I have to scoot. So 8 quick things, they are quick, you'll see. 8 quick ways we can support young children. So number 1 is playing with words and sounds. The most important groundwork to, well, I don't want to favor, there's different schools of thought would say different things. One of the most important foundations for reading power is that kids hear the parts and sounds and words. It's called, teachers would call it phonemic awareness. So the word, let's say the word cat. Phonemic awareness is hearing k, at. It's not C-A-T. It's not, oh, it begins with a C. It's just being able to hear the word. So what we recommend to families is a lot of wordplay, rhyming games, nursery rhymes. In your first language, if you have songs in your home language or the adult's language of comfort, singing those songs, noticing words that rhyme, making nonsense rhymes, playing name games. You know, there was this old, what was that song? Banana, Fana, Fee-Fi. You know.
Gail, Bofeo, Banana.
Yeah, oh, look at you, you're going. She's got it. Yeah, right? Joyful. But just being playful with words and songs and poems, and I was going to put something else down there, but I forgot what it was. Being a word detective and word collectors. So when you're reading, I don't know if your kids are interested, I don't know if they've gone out of style, Richard Scarry books with all the things on the page. When my kids were little, my son we lived in New York City and you could see a lot of blimps, dirigibles, but he called it a dirigible because of Richard Scarry books. Because we read, my mom came and she's like, oh my gosh, I think he's gonna go to Harvard. Because she was so like, oh my gosh, he said dirigible for blimp, and I'm just like, we read Richard Scarry 100 times a day. That's why. But building vocabulary through reading, and if your child says, I don't like maybe a shirt. I don't like this shirt. Why don't you like it? Because I don't like it. Why? Because of this, maybe the tag. What about the tag? It hurts. How does it hurt? Is it scratchy? It's scratchy. So this is an interaction where we're supporting the child's language, oral language development, vocabulary development. So every time your child expresses I like this. What do you like about it? It's funny. What's funny about it? Her face. What about her face? And then, so just keep pushing conversation too. We'll talk about that again. But just getting kids to be interested in words. And even if you're watching something with your child or you're reading something aloud to your child, even a very simple picture book, be a word noticer. Oh, I love how the author said this. Oh, this is such a pretty word. I love to say the word delicate, delicate. And it makes me say it like delicate. So that's like isolating word, appreciating a word, playing with the word, all in one fell swoop. So just if you notice words and you bring those to the surface and then get your kids to notice words, and even creating, I didn't do this necessarily, but creating word collections with your kids, like favorite words that you say a lot, and it's just, and try to, so sometimes when I'm in a classroom, this happened the other day. We were reading a poem, but not here, at another school, reading a poem and the word doze, D-O-Z-E was in the poem. And a child said, what does doze mean? And so and I said, well, what do you think? And somebody said, bulldozer, construction guy in the class. So, well, bulldozer is a different word than doze. And I said, let me help you. What if I said, oh, I'm so tired, I feel like I'm gonna doze off. And they said, oh, that means tired. So then even with our bodies, we acted out dozing off. They said, pretend you're gonna doze. I shouldn't do it with you right now, because you might just go. But it happens, I know. But just, so let's pretend we're dozing off. And kids were and that's also a language acquisition thing, that total physical response, where they feel it in their bodies. I do it a lot with little kids. Today, when we were reading this book, we just talked so much about this cover, and one of the kids in First Step said, she looks happy. And I said, everybody, let's make our face just like her face. And the kids all made their face. I said, is it happy? And somebody said, she's glad, she's excited. And we're in authentically, without stress. It's not a vocabulary test. We're building vocabulary and feeling it in our faces. So, and then translanguaging. So, and your translanguage is going between languages. So your home language, if it's not English, being appreciative of words in your home language. Interesting words, slowing down words in your home language so kids can hear all the sounds in the words. We want to tune their ears into the different sounds that words make. And then you could say things like, I'm thinking of, your child says, what are we having for dinner tonight? And you might say, it's something that starts with p, p, p. And they might say pancakes, nope, p, p, pizza, yes, pizza. Or what are we having for dinner tonight? It rhymes with pizza. Oh, are we having pizza? And then, so that kind of language play is so important before kids are reading conventionally. Just real quick, reading aloud to your children. Even those of you who have older kids and your kids can already read the words, sometimes parents think, oh, Tag, you're it. Your time is better spent reading by yourselves, kids reading by themselves. And I would argue, and there's research that shows, the more adults read to children, the better for children. And there's tons of research on the benefits of that. You're helping to build your child's vocabulary. You're helping to build your child's understanding how story works, how genre works. They'll come to pre-primary and know this book about a penguin is a story. This book about penguins is nonfiction. You didn't teach them that, but because you've read aloud so much, they bring to school an understanding. Kids who are read to a lot it impacts their writing. You can tell probably a child who's got a lot of story in their lives, how they approach writing, and concept knowledge. One of the most important things for kids to ultimately, not that we're thinking about testing when we're thinking about little kids, but maybe in the back of our mind we're thinking about it. One of the most important things is that kids have, in the field, language comprehension. They have concept knowledge. They have background knowledge. They have, because the child, so say the child is in 5th grade and the text they're reading is about photosynthesis. The child that can decode that word, photosynthesis, yay, you're halfway there, but the child who really understands what that means is all the way there, who can read it and understand it. So, and then also, your kids, and when they start to decode, might be reading early level books that are not very complex, but you could read aloud chapter books that are more complex and have more literary language. Because you're reading it aloud, your kids can understand it and they can talk to you about it. So you think of your read aloud at home as the carrot dangling for the child, so if anyone has, say, 4th grade kids that age, sometimes parents will say to me, my kids only want to read graphic novels, or my kids only want to read Diary of a Wimpy Kid and those kinds of books. And I would say, let them read those books. If they're choosing it and they're enjoying it, that's huge. But if you want them to read more complex text or more hefty text, read it to them. My husband read, I didn't even get into it because it's not my genre, Lord of the Rings to my kids when they were in like 3rd and 5th grade. And Theo, my younger son, loved it. And they still talk about it. And I'm listening to it, doing something, thinking, I don't think they get that. They got what they got. But they weren't ready to read that kind of thing in their real life, their own reading life. But with a grown-up, they could read it. And also, just another message about reading aloud to your kids in whatever language you're most comfortable reading aloud. It all will come together. And in fact, your children are so much more fortunate. And this is my envy coming through. I so wish I had a second fluent language, or a third or a fourth, like some of your kids. And I wish my children did. It's my biggest regret. Reading in front of your children, which is a little bit different. So if you're on your phone and you're scrolling news, just say to your kid, oh, I'm reading the news. Even if it's kind of a white lie, you might be on Amazon or something, I don't know, but I'm reading about water filters. Frame it that way so that they see a device, they see you in the act of reading, because everything you do, your kids watch, right? And I'm not a smoker, I've never smoked cigarettes, but both of my parents smoked cigarettes because I was, those days. And I loved to pretend smoke when I was little. Pretzels, pencils, and I could smoke, because my mom's one eye would go, I was such a smoker mimic. Well, I didn't end up smoking, so yay. But your kids mimic you in ways you don't even know, and let them catch you in the act of reading, and seeing you do that, and also sharing your experiences. When I was little, what was hard for me? Or when I was little, my favorite book was. Or when I was little, I remember my teacher read aloud, blah blah. And so yeah. Oh gosh, let me see. Okay, I'm still good. And then this is a little nuanced, but that social network and support, we talked about that people need when they're learning, to be your child's reading buddy. So the school, first of all, the school librarian here is hot ticket.
Amazing. Like, we are so
If
lucky.
you say, my child is interested in snails that are indigenous to Antarctica, she's probably like, I've got a book for that. Or I know where you could go to get a book for that. I'm meeting with her at 7:30 tomorrow morning just to talk books. So you have an amazing resource And the other campus, I'm sure you do too.
They
The
do.
people
They do.
watching, yeah. I haven't been out there, but I'm sure.
Elementary school, Wiesbaden.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge you, Wiesbaden. Hi there. Those of you watching remotely, sorry it took me halfway through. But so this school library and anything your child is interested in, meet interest with text. That's also one of the most important things to share with your child. You know that line, there's an app for that. As a literacy educator, I always say there's a book for that. Anything somebody's interested in, there's something you could read about, a text for it, I should say. There's something you could read about it. And if your children understand from a really young age, if I have this interest, I can find a book, that will always be a habit of theirs. And then a reading buddy, this side note, whenever my family and I travel, I mean, you don't need to fake this if this isn't your favorite thing to do, but whenever we travel, I always want to find the best coffee shop and a great independent bookstore. Those are two things I look for everywhere. Yeah, I love the museum. Yeah, I love the beautiful buildings and the natural environment, but I know I'm going to want, and everywhere we go, my son is like, did you find the bookstore we're going to? When he was little, he was all like, but that was my habit around it. So they would come in and I'd say, you could get a book. And no, we don't buy toys at the bookstore. You could get a book. But anyway, it was a social, begrudging sometimes social interaction. And then just I guess this connects to the other one, talking about your reading and favorite authors. And have genre and, anyway, be a buddy. Be your child's book club. And then choice. Your children choosing what they want to read, even if you have to read Piggy and the Elephant Go to Jail. I know it's not a real title, but Piggy and Elephant Go to Jail. Even if you have to read that 700 times, there's something they need in that book. And like little kids, I had a girl when I was teaching who wore red boots, like leather red boots, cowboy boots, every day with bare feet, and when she took those boots off, but she was in a rut, and I don't mean rut negatively, but you know how kids get habituated. They want always the same food. They want to wear the same shirt. They want you to cut their sandwich in exactly the same way. Sometimes they get in those book ruts, and I don't mean it negatively either, but there must be some comfort that they get from that, and roll with it, and then all of a sudden that book is lost. I don't know if you need to change it up for yourself, but this is more for older kids. And if your child is reading something and you feel like they're under reading, maybe they could read more complex, hefty text, but they're under reading. Sometimes we get stressed, like, oh no, they won't lose reading ground. If they're reading for pleasure, that's a win. And just be curious. Oh, I notice you're often reading these Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and that looks like you've read it about 10 times. What attracts you to it? Oh, I like it because it's funny. Oh, are you into funny series? Go to the librarian. What's a funny series? And then you can have alternatives, but just be curious, not judgmental, I guess. Another choice is involved in reading is where we read, what we read, and if your child is in primary and just starting to decode, one of the things I always say to parents, they're probably tired, kids get tired at the end of the day. If they want you to read to them, that counts as reading time. Say, well, why don't you read by yourself for 10 minutes and then I'll read to you, or something like that. But just know it's not a cheat if your child, even though they can read the words, if they still want you to read to them. Would you agree with that, Kathy?
Oh, definitely.
And these are getting redundant a little bit, but just make time, have a reading habit in the house every day with some consistency as possible. And I know you're all going on vacation, well, not all of you going on vacation, but there's a school break next week. So BYO, bring your own book, and every vacation, just always make sure, it's like phone, chapstick, wallet, credit cards, book, that your kids think like that, like water bottle, extra socks, extra underpants in the carry-on. books, that books are always a companion, because you never know when you're going to need one. And so just talk about things. All the teachers were talking about having conversations about everything and being really present. When your child is saying something, you're so busy and life is going on, and sometimes I really wish I was more like this, just little regrets. My son, if I was on my phone, he would say something to me. I remember this once. It's such parenting guilt. And I was looking at my phone and Theo said, blah, blah, blah. And I said, wow, really? And he said to me, Mom, I hate when you say that so slowly. Wow, really? Like he knew I'm not there with him. And have a variety of language experiences, playful language, serious language, conversational language. And one thing is to just always have, and let me just jump ahead here, these questions that can grow conversations with your child. And you ask them these all the time, but sometimes seeing them in one place can be really helpful. So your child says something, what makes you think so? Why do you think it's like that? So in the car, one time, Theo said, Taylor Swift is so annoying. That's real. Taylor Swift song was on. Well, what do you mean annoying? Well, she always does that. What does she do? It's like she tries to rap on a song, like she talks. Every song she has a little talking part. And I said, oh my gosh, why do you think she does that? And he's like, I don't know, I think she thinks it sounds cool. Like that could have been it was a nothing burger conversation. If I said to Theo today, remember we were talking about Taylor Swift, he'd probably say, I never talk about Taylor Swift. Because he's a cool guy. Oh yes, you did. But he probably doesn't remember the conversation, but I pushed, say more, say why do you think it's like that? And it gives you a little oral language burst with your child. I'll go back one more to, this is another important one. Model understanding and the pursuit of understanding across the day. So if you're watching a show with your child, say, or video, talk about the characters. Why do you think he did that? That is so weird that he, broke his brother's toy and didn't tell his brother. What? Well, he didn't want to get in trouble. He didn't want his brother mad. Well, what could have happened? And be in the world of maybe, it might, I think that. Because sometimes we see kids who are so scared to venture a guess. They want to be right. And if they're not right, they're not participating. And it's really important that kids have an elasticity to be able to say, well, maybe it might be one way to think about it, all those different little language stems. So I'm gonna stop here. So we got through all 8 and some conversation starters. And then, actually I'll just do this last little bit. You'll have this in the slide, but this is just a little checklist. And there's so many, they're not bossy, like you have to do this. They're concepts. Like I encourage positive reading identities. What would that look like in your home? It doesn't have to look like in your home. There's so many different ways to do all of these things. So you can really customize it to your family's values and your family's vibe, if you will. And then finally, this is from a research article that I love. This Canadian literacy educator has this big article, and one of her closing lines, the research shows, is that when pleasure and reading are companions, we know very well that children become engaged readers and are likely to continue to read throughout their lives. And there's a whole bunch of research that correlates adult pleasure reading with quality of life. It's that adult pleasure readers are more likely to, have higher socioeconomic, be in a higher socioeconomic bracket, have higher educational and academic achievement, be more engaged civically in their communities, be more engaged with the cultural activities in their communities. And so pleasure reading is just as important as reading with, as a good pairing, reading with power and reading with pleasure. If we could get those two things together, chef's kiss. And I will stop there, truly, and just check in with you and see. We've got like 10 minutes left, and if anyone needs to leave, you leave as you need to, but I don't know if anybody has any questions or scenarios you want to play out, or if there's anything missing here that you just wanted to hear more about. Yes.
Hi. So all of us probably have bilingual these kids, right? So how do we start reading? So my kid is in pre-primary, and the main language is Russian at home, and English is here. So in Russian he knows the letters, he starts connecting the syllables, and in English different letters. So do I keep like pushing him reading in Russian, or is he gonna get confused because in school he's gonna learn a different? Like, when do we start? When do we pay attention?
So I'll start the response, but I might turn it over to you, Gail, because you not that you know this child, but you know children in this situation. So what a lot of research suggests is the language of, well, some people say the language of comfort, the first language, the home language. Continue to read in that. There could temporarily be some confusion, but kids who are bilingual, multilingual, straighten that out. And so I think that if you have a lot of literature and texts that are in Russian, continue to read aloud in Russian and write in Russian if your child's learning those Russian letters or symbol. Would you say? Because they're not Roman letters. What?
Greek.
Yeah. Okay. So continue with that, and then your child, as you will, it's additive. It's not either or, but additive. Add in the alphabet, and because they have experience learning letter sound represent or Cyrillic sound representation through Russian, they can transfer that concept. This letter A or B makes this sound B, and so they'll in some ways have a head start to do letter sound matching. And I'm going to tag it over to you if you want to add in from experience.
Just add.
Okay.
But I would just add that we always encourage parents to always start reading in your home language, your comfort language, whatever that is. And whatever you do, the conversations that you have with books, let's say your child does bring an English book home from the library here. You might read that story in English, obviously, because it's in English. But then all of the things that Kathy was referring to about conversations, even throughout the book, stopping to say, oh, what happened so far? Who are the characters? What do you think? What could happen? What could, if we were to write a different ending? All of that can be in your comfort language, your home language. And what Kathy was saying is if you are already exploring the equivalent of letters and sounds in your home language, of course they're going to learn at FIS how to read and write in English first. But because you've been doing that in your home language, there's going to be an association that they make, which is going to make their journey of learning it in English a little bit easier. Or there's going to be a familiarity around that. It's not going to be a brand new concept. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I would also add, like what Kathy was saying, with all of these things that you're doing in your home language. Now we realize that, like in Korean, there isn't a lot of rhyme. So maybe you wouldn't do that in your home language if it's Korean. But you could in another language that does have rhyme, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question. Does anybody else have a question, scenario, deep despair over anything? No? Yes.
I'm a bit like you, an avid reader, and then I had children like, oh my god, I haven't picked up a book for 5 years. And so that passion for engaging books and language has always been part of our, story time with our kids along with we're traveling. It's just occasional, and my son has an absolute love of books, listen to books. It's that transitioning to him going on his journey and practicing. You just get the
Yes.
that sort of, you know, what are the sort of techniques for maybe avoiding those sort of, you know, you don't want a moment of crisis, because again that has a you know, a negative association with the language and learning and improving his literacy. But if he isn't practicing it himself, it's a self-motivating.
Yeah. How old, may I ask?
He's 6.
6. Okay, so he's in first grade.
Yeah.
Here. So I don't know. So sometimes kids put up. I would have a curiosity about the resistance and just say. So if it's exhaustion, then audiobooks, or you continue to read aloud. They're getting so much good practice in school. Reading, they have reading time in first grade, they writing time, and in lower elementary grades, reading and writing are symbiotic relation. I don't know, I can't think of the word. Parasitic relation? No, symbiotic. You know what I'm saying. They go hand in hand. So if he comes home and he's reluctant and you feel like you're getting into these little power struggles, so read to him. Sometimes audiobooks are a nice, that, you know, just like listen to a story, have your child listen to a story, and what the cherry on top is to listen to the story and have the book in hand, because children's eyes that attract, you know, to the print, and they're hearing the story. So that is helping them as a reader. Are you worried he'll lose reading ground if, or?
No, it's just that, you know, practice.
Yes.
It does, you know, and then he'll get out, and it's not all the time.
Yes.
Resistance every time, and actually when he does drink, he goes, oh, let's do another one. So it's, again, it's, well.
Yeah, and you know, and I don't know what his reading power is at this point with regard to his confidence with strategies and skills, but they're fledgling readers. They're on these little fragile legs, and they're oftentimes kids worry about not being good at it. So I would have a curiosity, and you know, like your parent research, when is he obstinate or stubborn about it, or when does he resist, and what are the conditions? Is he tired? Is it that he's just he's having a reading growth spurt and feeling stressed about it? And is it just moody? Is something, you know, a one-off moody thing? But I think it's just like sometimes you plant all the seeds in the garden, they don't all grow. Some of the flowers just kind of die out, but you've planted the seeds, so it'll continue to grow. That was a messy metaphor. So flowers, I don't know, but yeah. And that again, it speaks to that one slide where reading life is not just steady. But I admire you not going for the battle. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. I have twins, so I try to read with them, but they're like competing with each other the whole time. So I end up spending time with one and then with the other one. How can I be more efficient? How can we make this more streamlined? Because I'm spending. I want them to enjoy reading while the other one's reading, like have symbiosis instead of
Right.
like 2 different islands.
That's a teacher's struggle every day. Like to be more efficient. Oh my gosh, I'm just a version of that question for people who don't have twins too is kids around the same age. One likes this kind of book, one likes this kind of book, and you read to this one before bed and they want you to keep going, then this one, and it's like 9:30. So are you saying they demand your time to read aloud to them, or they demand your time to listen to them read, or?
Well, we do the whole spectrum.
Yes.
So we read, we write, they read, I read to them, they choose a book. It's like, so we have this routine from when they get home until they go to bed at different intervals, not all the time.
Yeah.
But it's like, I get one book and then I get another huge book that I'm supposed to read. You know, it's like, I want them, for me it's exhausting.
Yes.
And I want to, and it's also, there's a kind of competition, like, oh, I can read this word and I know this. And
Yes.
so they're also showing off to their sibling. which I don't think is, they're not helping each other. Right
No,
now.
no. So that's interesting. So, well, a couple quick things. Maybe you do because you've got these rituals, maybe you ritualize the rituals a little bit. The way a teacher might have independent reading time, where this is the time you read by yourself, you read by yourself, and you just like your teacher in school, you could say, I'm going to read with you, and I don't know even to have a timer, I'll read with you for 5 minutes, I'll read with you for 5 minutes. So you could do a couple of things. You could have read aloud time, you and the two, and you pick the book and you read aloud and get the conversation going. You could have independent reading time, like they do in school, where they get, I don't think you'd call it the school word, because, just enough with the school, stuff. And then you could even have partner reading time, and where and it might be hard at first, but where you have a basket of books and it might be parallel reading, or maybe they choose to read something together. But I think that your intention, it sounds like, is to reduce the competition, because that's not helpful, and it makes it more stressful then for you, because that brings in a parenting piece that it can be tricky. But I think because you've got those rituals, if there's a way you could even I use ritualize inside the ritual, and I don't know if that works in your system that you've got at home, but separating locations. Where's your reading spot? Where's your best reading spot? Where's your best reading spot? That way it's simultaneous, and you're not like, you don't have 2 reading periods plus a read aloud period, or read aloud time where, listen to me, I'm talking like you have school at home. I don't mean to sound like that, I'm using school language, but I don't know, is there something in that could be useful, or
I'll give it a try.
see, yeah.
I'm using all the strategies that you're telling us.
Yeah.
But I'm clearly not a professional.
Well,
Everyone wants to be at home.
We're always learning. There's always, this is not a done deal. There's always more coming in. But one of the questions I always ask teachers, if they're talking about kids having a reading trouble, some sort of reading trouble, maybe it's focus. Oh, this child really can read for a few minutes, then he's up and he's around the room. He's squiggly and squirmy. So I always say to teachers, is this a reading issue or is it an all-day issue? Because if it's an all-day issue, if the child has focus problems all day, then we work on it all day. If it's only in reading, then we have to figure out how do we help them become a more focused reader. So I would think with the twins, especially the competition part, is it something in different domains as well as reading, where they kind of feel competitive with each other? So then it's maybe working on it in something else will help alleviate it in reading time. I don't know, do you two want to add in anything, any advice, or?
I would add that if you have the routine, and then you even look at the calendar and say, this is the day that you're choosing the book, and this is the day that you're choosing the book, and make it a schedule so that you can keep it so that you're reading to both of them at the same time. And maybe then you set those parameters. When it's your turn to read the book, you get to say the words that you know. When it's your turn to read the book, you get. It's going to be like anything we do at school. It's going to take practice, and it's not going to work on the day one. And you're going to have to revisit what those parameters are. And I also would agree with Kathy that if you also want them to do this on their own, pick a spot. Where's your best place to read? Where's your best place to read? Those would be the 2 things that stand out to me, if that helps. So.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Did you want to add anything?
Yes,
Anyway, well, we're a little minute over, so I'll stop formally, like cut, I guess. Is that what they say in the movies? Cut. Here's something, stop. So I'll stop officially. I have a few minutes to hang around if anyone has a question you just prefer to be in one-on-one or one-on-3 with all of us, because maybe I do this work with teachers a lot, but as a parent I only did it twice. So I don't know, but there's so many ways this can look. And I just, if you think, the big thing is to think about is how can I make an inviting, pleasurable, how can I create a reading environment in my home that's inviting and pleasurable, and where I'm a support, I'm a coach, I'm a friend. Those are probably the best conditions to help your child become a lifelong
Thinking
reader.
about your home language, your comfort language, that's where we want families to focus that work.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, team. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and yeah, good luck out there. I have a PDF of the slides I'll send to you, and I don't know if you have a parent newsletter.
Yep, we'll make sure we get them out.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you again. And thank you, tech support.
Can I ask you one more question?